Hello and welcome to another Tabletop Ramblings SBG Battle Report. The history of elf and dwarf is filled with minor skirmishes and battles between these two noble people. And when it comes to light that a priceless heirloom is buried between their two kingdoms, conflict is inevitable. Durin, eager to secure his kingdom with the priceless heirloom, has ventured under the boughs of Lothlorien. And Haldir and his elves will stop at nothing to protect what is theirs. Leading the Lothlorien force today is Haldir. He has heavy armour and a bow. He has with him 6 Khazadum with no additional war gear, 5 with spear and bow, 2 with spear and shield, 1 with a banner and spear. And then there's also a sentinel. Also riding to war for Lothlorien is the Khazadum captain. He has a bow, shield and horse. He's accompanied by 5 knights with shield and a wood elf sentinel. And that is 500 points of Lothlorien. Kingdom of Khazadum is led by Durin. Durin has 6 Khazad Guard upgraded to Hearth Guard, which gives them the Burly special rule. And he also has 2 Bowmen and 2 warriors with shield. His second warband is the King's Champion with his 2 heralds. And he has 6 warriors with shield and 4 with bow. For 500 points of the Kingdom of Khazadum. For this battle, we'll give the honour of being good to the elves, as they are fighting in their home territory. So they will be fighting with the green dice, and using red will be the dwarves, who will take the place of the evil side. Today's battle takes place on the outskirts of Lothlorien, that great elven forest. The board has scattered trees and forested areas, along with some rocky terrain, showing that it is the outskirts and close to that great kingdom of Khazadum and their mountain fastness. The gentle flowing stream is open ground, and the 2 areas of woodland are wooded terrain. Also on the battlefield are 6 objective markers. Got 1 down here, 1 up there, 1 there, just hiding behind that tree, 1 up there, 1 there, and 1 there. Those 6 objective markers are there because the scenario is Heirloom of Ages Past. The purpose of Heirloom of Ages Past is for both of our forces to dig up the heirloom. But of the 6 objectives, only 1 is the correct heirloom. When a model ends its move within base contact of one of the potential heirlooms, we roll a dice, and on a 1 to 5 it is not the heirloom, but on a 6 the real heirloom has been found. If there's only 1 heirloom left, a roll of the 6 is automatically rolled. The victory points are heavily weighted around finding the heirloom, with 6 victory points to the side who are in possession of the heirloom at the end of the game, and 3 if the heirloom has been dropped but that side have more models within 3 inches. There's also 1 victory point for wounding the enemy leader, or 2 for killing them, 1 for breaking the enemy, and 2 for breaking them while being unbroken, and also 1 victory point for having a banner, or 2 if you have a banner and the enemy does not. This game runs until 1 force is reduced to 25%. Then at the end of that turn, the game ends and the victory points are calculated. Deployment for this scenario is Maelstrom of Battle. So with that, we'll get straight into rolling for priority and getting the forces deployed on the board. Priority turn 1 goes to the dwarves. End of turn 1 movement, and this is how the board is looking. Durin came in over on the left. He rolled a 3 for Maelstrom of Battle, which meant that it was the elves' choice, east or west. They put him right in that far corner. Then the King's Champion rolled a 2. He was also at the mercy of the elves, and it wasn't worth wasting all of his might to pump it up to something useful like a 4. So he is in the exact opposite corner to his leader. Haldir got a lot more lucky. He got a 4, so he could choose anywhere north or south, and came in ready to volley some shots into the elves and to make tracks towards the potential heirloom sites. The captain, on the other hand, rolled a 2, which put him again at his enemy's mercy, and Durin elected to have him come right near Durin's lethal Hearthguard. Fortunately, as a nearly all mounted unit, they were able to come on right next to the dwarves and ride out of charge range. So they're still able to keep control of the situation up there. And that is how the board is looking going into the shoot phase for turn 1. Starting the shoot phase with the 2 Dwarven archers. They're the only 2 that are able to shoot for the Dwarven side. They've moved half, so they're hitting on 5s. They're just going after the archers there. They've got strength 3 bows, and as they are defense 5, they're wounding on 5s. So that 1 hits. Can it wound? No. No wound from the dwarves. In the elven shoot, the elves are just going to fire back, and they are going after those archers. So they'll be in the ways. They've moved, so they're hitting on 4s. There's a few hits there. 2 misses, and Haldir's bigger dice there have missed as well. And due to the armour of the dwarves, even those archers are defence 6. But let's do the in the ways first. Do they hit that front rank? 4+ they go through. So 2 hit archers and 1 hits one of those shieldmen in the front. So on a shield, no. And then on the archers, no. So no wounds there from the elves. We then come up to the top where the captain with a bow has a shot. He has only moved 5 inches, so he's able to shoot. And he's just going to go for that archer there. He misses. So that is the end of the shoot phase and the end of the turn. So we'll go into turn 2 priority. It goes to the elves. Come in during the movement phase for the elves, and that sentinel is going to call Eldragar Madrigal his song spell, and he's going to make this dwarf take a courage test. And the dwarf easily passes that there, especially with Durin's warhorn there. So he is fine. If he'd failed, he'd have been under the command of the elf and would have been able to move and thus not shoot next turn. As it is, that's not gone off. And then, having pre-measured that, he is just going to move 3 so that he's out of charge range but able to shoot. This is the board at the end of turn 2 movement. Up here, we've already seen that the cavalry have given ground. They don't want to charge and then get counter-charged. They're much more effective if they can charge when their opponent has priority. The dwarves countered that movement by just moving up as a big blob towards the objectives, effectively ignoring the cavalry as there's nothing really they can do until the cavalry choose otherwise. But they have managed to get 2 firing lines onto the cavalry to put some pressure on them and force them to charge. Down here, the elves have stayed stationary to shoot, with their warriors getting ready to jump in front and form a shield wall at the last second. And then a few elves have headed off, making a break for the objectives. And the dwarves countered by doing a similar manoeuvre for objectives over here with those 3, but the bulk of their force, including the archers, are just making a run straight for the elves to try and cut through. They do have some bows, but greatly outnumbered by the elven bows. They are better off just chucking everything into combat and ignoring the shooting war. So with movement done, we'll go straight into the shooting. Now, a lot of elves have clear shots at the King's Champion, who's defense 7. However, because he's in base contact with 2 of his heralds, he gets +2 defense. So he's a massive defense 9 at the moment. So it's not worth shooting him. Instead, the archers are all just going to shoot into standard dwarves. There's 6 shots plus 2 from Haldir. Haldir will be the bigger dice. We forgot that he's got 2 shots last turn. He's the bigger dice, and then the 5 Galadrin Bowmen and the Wood Elf Sentinel are the smaller green dice. They've not moved, so they're hitting on 3s, and that is a very strong opening volley there. A lot of good hits, but they do need 6s to wound these dwarves. Can they do it? Oh, there's one wound. It's better than nothing there, and a dwarf goes down. With first blood having been drawn by bow fire, the captain there hiding behind the tree and the Wood Elf Sentinel are going to fire onto the archer. The Sentinel hits, the bigger dice there being the captain. And just a 1, definitely no wound there. And those 2 archers are going to fire back. They've both got shots onto the captain. They've not moved. Sorry for that glare. And they both miss. Oh dear, dwarves. And that is all of the dwarven shooting. The entire dwarven volley relying on those 2 not to miss. End of a fairly lacklustre shooting phase. And there are no combats, so that is the end of the turn. The dwarves trying to plough forward as the elves, with their superior mobility from being able to run further on longer legs and having cavalry, are outmanoeuvring the dwarves. Let's go into turn 3 priority. And it goes on a draw. This time it goes to the dwarves. Partway through the dwarven move, down on this right hand side, and this dwarf is going to attempt to dig up the heirloom, and it's a 6! He has picked up the heirloom there behind dwarven lines, nice and safe. So he now has the objective, and we'll put an objective marker on him. First attempt, well done, dwarves. Following the dwarven discovery of the heirloom in the bottom right, the elves have charged down at the bottom to try and break through and get to that objective as quickly as possible. Up here, Durin and his force have tried to push through towards the objective, but have found themselves in this bottleneck, and 2 knights have charged. The rest of the knights and the sentinel are just ploughing down towards the objective to try and bring weight of numbers against the bottom right force of dwarves to break through and get that objective before the short little legs of Durin and his folk can catch up. Into the shoot phase, there's just 2 shots. There's 2 dwarf bowmen there who have long shots at the cavalry. They've only got an 18-inch range, and they're about 17.5 inches away. They've moved, so they'll be hitting on 4s. That's a solid hit. Does it hit the horse or rider? The rider, another 6 will take him off his horse. Oh, 1. That's unlucky there. If it had been 6-1-6, he'd have whipped out a horse. As it is, it thuds harmlessly into a shield. It's the end of the shooting. We'll go into the combat phase. We'll start up at the top. The Khazad Guard going 2-hand because they're burly, so they have no -1 against the charging elven cavalry. Oh, and it just goes to the elves there. Low scoring for them all. So these are now doubled up. They do need 6s though. Oh, and 2 6s sees that elf smash the Khazad Guard to the ground. The other elf is going to attempt to follow in his brother's footsteps. Oh, but he doesn't. That is cocked, so he needs the 6 here. He's got the fight value, but it's just a 5. That's not good for the elf. Strength 4 and burly means that it should be 5s, but down to 4s to wound that elf. Oh, but it's a 3, and he's safe. He backs off, and that skirmish there has gone in the elves' favour. We then come down to the right flank, where the elves have charged everything except the King's Champion to try and break through before the King's Champion can cut them to bits. We'll start off at the top with this 1-on-1. Both fighting normally. It goes to the dwarf. There is, however, an elven banner, so he needs the 6 there, but it's just a 2. And the dwarf wins. Strength 3 on that dwarf, but there is no shield on the elf. So, wounding on 5s. Ooh, not quite. The elf lives to fight another turn. We then have 2-on-1. That dwarf is going to shield because he has a banner, so he's -1. And it's 1 and a banner. So the banner is -1 for having a banner, and then the elf will 2-hand. So everyone in this is a -1. Oh, and the dwarf banner wins it. There is banner reroll for good, but no. So shielding there has pushed them back. The next fight along is Haldir and Friend against the other banner. And again, that other banner is going to shield, so he'll have 2 attacks but won't make strikes if he wins. And then Haldir is going to 2-hand. He is the bigger dice, and then the spear support is just normal. Ooh. Haldir there getting the 5, but it's down to 4 because he 2-handed. But the banner is a 6 down to a 5. He's got the banner reroll for the spearman, so we'll reroll the spearman. If he can get the 6, then they've won. No. So Haldir there is going to spend a point of might. He is going to need just 5s to wound that banner because of going 2-hand, and it will be 6s by 4 for the spearman. So we'll roll these. Oh, that's 1 from Haldir and a 6 by 5. That is 2 wounds to that banner. He does have fate, but he's only got 2. So he needs to pass both of these to live. Which he does! The banner there backs away, loses both fate, but he survives. That has been a very, very lucky roll there for the dwarves. The next fight is this 2-on-1, and the front one, which is the big one, is going to 2-hand. Oh dear me, that goes to the dwarf, who is going to be wounding on 5s, and he kills him. The dwarf there breaks the elf in half with his axe. And then the next fight is a dwarf on 2. And exactly the same thing. The bigger dice is the 2-handing dice. That's gone in their favour. Is the banner in range? Yes. So he does have a banner. And he doesn't win. And in fact, it was the spearman that got the 6. And with the higher fight value, there's nothing the dwarf could have done. So it's 5s on the big dice and 6s on the little dice there. Oh, and they get him. Didn't even need to 2-hand. It's the spearman that brought the dwarf low. We then have another 2-on-1. And again, the front one is going to 2-hand. And that is the bigger dice. Oh, but it definitely goes to the dwarf there, who needs a 5. No. Doesn't wound him. And pushes the elf back. The dwarves there in a bad position, having to get charged by spear supports, have held the line very well there and have even cut through some elves in turn. All to protect the objective, that heirloom there in the back right, long enough that Durin can come in and save the day. The board at the end of turn 3, and combat has been joined. Many dwarves have fallen, and the elves now starting to take casualties as well. Let's go into turn 4 priority. And it goes to the elves. Start of the movement phase, and with the elves having priority, the King's Champion is calling a heroic move. Haldir, with quite a strong position and a lot of spear supports in the right places, has decided to allow that to happen. And then up here as well, Durin is calling a heroic move as well. He needs to make sure he doesn't get trapped in that bottleneck, and he wants to spill out and surprise and surround rather those cavalry. And the captain, unable to really contest that, is allowing that as well. End of turn 4 move, and the heroics have allowed Durin to pounce and surround the cavalry and break out importantly from that choke point. And down here, the King's Champion has engaged Haldir, and all along the line the dwarves have plugged any gaps and have tried to just hold that wall. The wounded banner, the herald there, is hiding behind the King's Champion, making sure he's in base contact to increase the defence of the champion. In the Elven move, they've just formed up, made sure they can charge through any slight gap there to get everyone into combat that they can. This elf here is coming round to try and force the objective along with the cavalry, who are still another turn away from being able to charge the dwarves. They're 2 turns, in fact, as those dwarves just shuffle back to allow them to be outside of 10 inches, but they'll still be able to shoot. And that is how the board is looking. We'll go into the shoot phase. Just the 2 dwarven shots here against those charging cavalry. They've moved, so they're hitting on 5s. 2 solid hits there on 6s. Can they stop that cavalry charge? Do they hit the horse or rider? They both hit horses. Oh, so they are now going to need 5s to take out those 2 front horses. Can they do it? Oh, no, they can't. That would have been heroic shooting there, those dwarves. If they could have whipped the horses from under the elves, they would have really helped the dwarven position there with the objective getting swarmed by elves. Jumping ahead into the combat phase, both the King's Champion and Haldir have called heroic strikes. That's Haldir's 2nd of 3 and the King's Champion's 2nd of 2. That's an absolutely monster profile, but only having 2 might does seem a little bit harsh when most other similar profiles would be 3, but that's by the by. So the King's Champion now out of might. And up here, Durin has spent his 2nd point of might on a heroic combat. Might seem a bit of a waste, but it's anything to get some movement towards the bottom of the board. Doesn't matter how much might he's got left at the end. If the elves get the objective, he knows he will lose. So we'll go straight into that heroic combat. Durin has 3 dice, 3 attacks. We'll just roll his. If he gets the 6, he's automatically won. Ooh, not quite. He does have a reroll. A 5. And then he's got 2 Khazadum going burly. No, so if the elf gets the 6, he will win. Oh, just a 3. Not quite there. So we'll do Durin first. He is also burly 2-handing. His axe is 2-hand, but he's not actually burly, but he's got a rule to that effect. So these are double strikes and he's wounding on 4s. And he absolutely smashes him to bits. So they back off because they were trapping an enemy, and will come back once they have done their move. And Durin and his 2 have just moved as quick as they can towards the objective in the far corner of the board. While we're up here, we'll do the elf against 3 Khazadum. The elf does have the fight value, so if he gets the 6, he's won. And he does! He gets a 6 against 2 5s and a 6. That elf has won. He's not got any charge bonuses because he didn't charge, so he needs 6s to wound. If he can get a 6 here, that would be massive. A 5. He did very, very well. They back away because they, oh dear, they did some trapping. So they back off or stand him back up. That elf there survives to harass the rear of the dwarves. Very well done there for that mounted knight. We then come down to the bottom of the board where the lines have clashed. We have this fight here. The dwarf is going to shield. They are desperate to hold this line until Durin can come and relieve them. The front elf again is going to two-hand. And that is the big one there. Oh, and they win it there with 6s apiece. Spearman has no negative. So that is a clear 6 there. And it will be 6s on the small to wound and 5s on the two-hander. And there we go. The spearman guts the dwarf. Not looking good now for the dwarves. Any holes in this line are going to be punished by elves. We then have this banner who will shield. And that is against the banner on -1 and two-handing for -1. So everything in this fight, -1 to win the fight. And it's 5s apiece, so it's a draw. The banner can't banner himself, so if he rolls a 6, he'll win. Oh no, he doesn't. Still a draw, and it goes to the elves on fight. So he is defense 7 because he's not in base contact with the King's Champion. So he will be wounded on 6s still and 5s. Nothing there. And that bannerman, that herald rather, backs away. We then have 2 against 1. And again, it's going to be two-handing against shielding. The dwarf desperate to survive. But he loses. However, that is a 6 down to a 5 because it's a two-hand. So if he can banner up to a 6... No. That was his one chance. So again, 6s on small, 5 on big. Oh, and the two-hander cuts the dwarf down. This is looking very nasty now for the dwarves. We'll come back to the heroes. We'll do this fight here. So this is a one-on-one. However, it is a sentinel who is a 2-attack warrior. He's like a mini hero. But he is only defense 3. So if the dwarf wins, he can't shield because he's got a bow. So he's going to chance it. But if he wins, it'll be nasty. Oh, and he has won. We'll just quickly measure if he's within 3. Oh, he is. He is in 3. So he can banner. He needs to win this because it will be very messy. If he loses, a 5. Also, very clearly in banner range, however, is that Bowmen. So if he can banner up to a 6, no. Goes to the 2 attacks of the sentinel. He's strength 3 on defense 6, so he needs 6s. 2 attacks. No, just 2 2s. But he pushes him back. And then we have 4 on 1. And again, the bigger dice are two-handing. There's no shielding option there for the Bowman. So he just needs to win this with blind luck. But he does not. And that is a 6 from a non-negative dice. So there's nothing a banner can do. So it is 6s and 5s on the big two-handers. Oh, a 5 on the non-two-handing. So close for the elves there, but this dwarf backs away, giving a little bit of hope there to the dwarves, who still have some semblance of a line going. The last fight then is King's Champion on Haldir. They have both struck, so we'll do their strike off now. King's Champion does start off on fight 6. Oh, and goes to 10 easily there, with Haldir only on fight 8. So Haldir there has lost the fight. We'll roll the 3 attacks for the King's Champion. If he gets the 6, he's won. A 5. He's got banner reroll. To a 6. King's Champion has won. He's a massive strength 5, so he only needs 5s to wound Haldir. and he does 1 wound on Haldir. Haldir is the leader, so he will use his one and only fate, and it's a 3. He will allow that to happen. He's going to save his might for a strike next turn. So he has taken a wound and lost his fate there. So that was a fairly even turn. The dwarves losing some models, but Haldir taking a wound and losing his fate puts him in quite a vulnerable position. End of the turn. This is how the board is looking. The lines have clashed together and dwarves have started to fall down on the bottom here, but they are holding. Question is whether they can hold long enough for Durin to go the long slog across the board and rescue them. Let's go into turn 5 priority. And it's another draw, as the dwarves didn't have it last. In fact, it was the elves. They just called heroic moves, so it goes to the dwarves. End of turn 5 movement, and the dwarves have just flooded through past that knight up here. The knight being charged by those dwarves that were at the back. The Khazad guard and Durin ploughing forward to get as close to the objective as they can, putting some pressure on the rear of the elves. Here the King's Champion is fighting against the Sentinel and Haldir. His banners are both holding the line, as are Bowmen. It's looking precarious there. However, Haldir is only on 1 wound, no fate. So with a little bit of luck, the elves could take a real beating down here. And then up slightly, the cavalry have formed up a wall. They're just out of 5, so they'll be able to charge without any fear. And it could be a bit disastrous there for the dwarves, although they do still have 1 last volley. This elven warrior has leapt in front of any arrows from his long journey this way. He's in front of the captain, so instead the 2 dwarves are just going to shoot out their horses. Oh, but they both miss! Oh dear, they've held quite well, but their courage has given way now, and their arrows fly wide of the mark. That's the only shooting. Oh, in fact, it's not the only shooting. The Sentinel decided he would stay still, and he is going to put an arrow into Durin. So he's not moved. He's hitting on 3s. He does hit. That's the easy bit. He now needs 6s by 6s. 6s by 5s, rather, against defense 9 Durin. Off to a bad start with a 1. It was a very long shot there, but worth a go. So that is the end of shooting. We'll come back with the combats. We'll come in up at the top left, with the knight that survived all those Khazad guard last time. He's now being attacked by a bowman and 2 with shield. They're all going to fight normally, and the elf there needing a high roll here to win it on fight value and not die. Oh, and he does! He gets a 5, and it is a draw, so he has won. That elf is a big thorn in the side there to the dwarves. He's going to strike one of the guys with shield, needing a 6 either way, and he gets him! That knight is an absolute monster. Not only has he survived, he has killed a dwarf. Little legend there, getting a promotion to captain fairly soon. That was a fantastic effort there from the elves. First fight we'll do down here will be this 4 on the banner. The banner will be the red dice, and then the front 2 will 2-hand, they're the bigger dice. Then the spearman fighting normally, and then the banner is -1. But if they win, it won't be +1 to wound. Oh dear, and the elves completely bottle it. They do have the 1 fighting normally who can re-roll, needing a 4 in fact to tie the fight, and he gets it there. The 5 has won because it's -1 on the banner, and he doesn't have fight value. So that banner then, 5s on the big blue dice, green dice rather, and then 6s on these 2. Oh, and he is dead twice over. Again, he's got 2 fates. It's this one that's failed it, the one with the crow on top. The one with the spike is full. Can he also pass both his fates? It's a 6 and a 5. Unbelievable. He has passed his as well. That's both banners now on 0 fate. Elves just cannot break those lines. The next fight then is shielding against spearman and a 2-handing elf. So 2-handing and spear support from the bowman, who also has a spear. Can they get in? This one has no fate. They have won there with double 6s. Nothing the bannerman can do there. So this, he is in base contact. He backs away. Oh, in fact, I don't think there's any way you can back away and maintain it. But either way, he is going to be 6s on the little ones and 5s on the big. And that 6 there gets him. He's got no fate left and the banner goes down. That is a big gaping hole now in that wall. We'll come to this fight here, which is 2-on-1. And again, it is 2-handing at the front. And it pays off there. The banner is now dead and the other one is too far away, so there's nothing the dwarf can do about it. And it will be 6s and 5s on the big 2-hander. Oh, and that's double dead there. The spear goes through his eye and the sword cleaves down straight through his helmet. That is a dead dwarf. We'll do another one again. 2-handing and spear support against the dwarf. And the dwarf, oh, it's a draw, but elven fight value takes it. So 6s and 5s again. Oh, and the 2-hand there coming in has got the kill. That is a bad day now for the dwarves. Their line has crumbled. It held well, but under that weight of elven strikes has just completely collapsed now. The last fight, however, could still come in favour of the dwarves. Haldir and the King's Champion are even fight, but Haldir has used his last might to strike. So he automatically wins on fight value. But we'll set the bar with the King's Champion, who gets a 5. He is in banner range. We'll do that now. Can he get the 6? No. So he's 5 high against 2 attacks from Haldir, who doesn't get it. 2 attacks from, I've used the wrong dice here, but 2 attacks from the Sentinel. No. 1 from the Spearman. No. Banner on Haldir's dice. Yes. Wins it on fight. That was incredibly close there. King's Champion would have won that if he'd managed to get the 6. That was very, very close there. His defense is 7. Yep, 7. So he will be taking wounds on 6s from all of the dice. And then Haldir's will be these ones, although he's out of might, so it doesn't really matter. So needing 6s here to bring down the King's Champion. Oh, there's 1 wound. 1 wound there on the King's Champion. So he backs away and he's going to save his fate for a later wound. This is the table at the end of turn 5. Things are starting to look a little bit dire out for the dwarves as the elves, with their superior mobility, have been able to take advantage of the bad positioning from Durin and have managed to start cutting their way through the dwarves to get to the heirloom. We'll go into turn 6 priority and see if Durin can do anything about it. He does win priority, so it goes to Durin and his dwarves to see what they can do about this nasty situation they find themselves in. End of turn 6 move, and the dwarves are getting closer and closer to being able to relieve their embattled comrades. The Khazad in the centre coming up to try and pressure Haldir, but the King's Champion, having charged into Haldir, has been surrounded, and the banner as well surrounded. They couldn't hold the line, and 5 elves are making an unimpeded break for the heirloom carrying dwarf. Up here, the dwarf bowmen charged forward. They couldn't get into the cavalry to turn off their charge bonuses, but they could at least form a wall further up, keeping those cavalry just that little bit further away from the objective. The cavalry then charged in and getting ready to cut them down. Durin, getting closer and closer to helping out the objective, is coming up, and he is being stalked by one of the sentinels. And over here, the dwarves have just broken past that cavalry with a bowman charging him to try and bring down that knight. There's just one shot in the shoot phase, and that is the sentinel who's moved. So hitting on 4s, and he is going for the Hail Mary there against Durin. He misses, unfortunately. That's the end of the shoot phase, a very brief one. We'll go into combats. All the combats are down in the bottom right, except for the knight and bowman combat in the top left. But we'll start here with the captain, who is calling a heroic combat. The captain is the 3 smaller dice. He's on the charge. 2 for the knight, and then we've actually forgotten to get the infantry, but we'll grab another one if we need one. And then it's just 1 from the bowman. The bowman actually wins. That is unbelievable. There is the dice for the swordsman. Oh, and it's a 6. That bowman's so close to stopping the heroic move going off. But we'd forgotten to grab his dice. And on re-rolling one of them for him, it was the 6. So close there for the bowman. I really thought he'd done it then, because on a 4 high, the captain wouldn't have been able to mount it. So now the captain's dice are needing 5s. These are double strikes because the guy's now prone. Nothing. Wow. And again, there we go. That 5 has killed him. So these back off slightly because they were against a trapped enemy, and then we'll come back once they have moved. So after that heroic move, the captain and knight have just moved to just outside of 5 inches from that dwarf, who can only move 5 with his little stubby legs. And the infantryman came to the other side of the tree in case they try and do any round the table kind of shenanigans and trying to hide from the cavalry. We'll do the next fight along, and that is the 2 knights against the bowmen. And the knights win it there on a 5 high. They need 6s to wound, but he's knocked down, so these are all double strikes, and they get him on the first lot there. That dwarf is down. We'll come up to the heroic knight up there for a 1-on-1. Oh, it goes to the dwarf. Can he get him? He'll need a 6. Oh, he doesn't get him, and that knight survives another turn. Incredible work there from that knight. We then move down to the last 2 combats, and we'll do the dwarven banner. In fact, we'll do that one second because it is dwarves priority, and they'll want that banner for the final fight. For this fight here, he has even fight value with Haldir. He's got 3 attacks. We'll set the bar there for the king's champion. He gets a 5 high. He's got his banner, so he stays at 5 high. This could spell disaster now for king's champion. He's only got 1 wound and 1 fate left. Haldir and a friend. Haldir only has 2 attacks, but he's got that many in there and no might. So he has won the fight. They all back away. And then there are a lot of strikes coming his way. They're all, regardless of who it is, going to be wounding on 6s. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7 Haldir there. That is going to be nasty, as these are all double strikes. We'll just gather the dice up for that. In fact, we'll pop back in a second when I can find a spare dice. So 7 strikes, all double strikes, needing 6s to wound. That is 1 wound there. He has got fate, so we'll just roll them all again. And another wound there. Even if he passes his fate, the king's champion is dead. Then the final fight is that banner against 3. They are all going to 2-hand. So everyone in this fight has -1 on an even playing field. Oh, and the 6 up at the top there. The elves do win it. Thought there the banner had managed to clutch onto life, but sadly he's now relying on his tough armour. These are double strikes, but they are needing 6s. Nothing on the first set. Can he survive? Yes. The banner does survive. He pushes the elves back. And that is the last combat of turn 6. End of turn 6, and the dwarven position has been overrun in the bottom right, but their reinforcements are getting nice and close. The battle is still right in the thick of it. The dwarves are not yet broken, and the elves are quite a long way off, having only suffered a few casualties. So the dwarves definitely on the back foot. They are probably going to lose the objective and have to fight to reclaim it. Let's go into turn 7, priority. See if the dwarves can do some magic. They do get priority. Let's see what they can do. This is the board at the end of turn 7 movement. Durin and a Khazad guard getting towards the objective that way. A lot of Khazad guard charging down here to try and stem the tide and to break through the elves. And the knight is still fighting one up there. The objective carrying dwarf, however, has been charged by the captain and a knight. It's looking like the objective may now fall into elven hands. Let's go into the combat phase as there is no shooting. We'll start off in the top left with the knight against archer. Oh, it's a draw. So it goes to the knight, needing a 6. Oh, so close. The knight nearly getting his second kill there while being charged repeatedly. We then come to the fights here, and we have a 1-on-1. The Khazad is going to burly two-hand, as they always will, but the elf is going to fight normally. He wins. The banner there too far away, so he's 1, needs 6s. Oh, and he kills him! He gets the Khazad guard, doesn't even need to two-hand, cuts him down. Next we have Haldir and 2. Haldir will be the bigger dice, and the smaller dice will be the normal 2. They're not going to two-hand. They win it. The banner will just quickly measure. The banner there is within 3. So he gets his reroll. Although, after all that, it's irrelevant because it is a 6 for the elves anyway. So these are needing 6s, and they get him as well. The Khazad guard have gone all the way across the board just to die to elven blades. We have 2-on-1. They've been emboldened slightly, these elves, and the front one is going to two-hand. Oh, and it's a draw. So it goes to the elf unless the banner reroll. No, just a 1. The Khazad guard there, losing the fight. So it's 6s on that dice, on the small dice, but the big one is 5s for two-handing. Oh, no, doesn't get him. Poor elf. Breaks the streak there, but it's a good thing for the dwarves. We now have not trapped banner, but he's got no fate against 3 elves. The 2 non-banner elves will two-hand, and the banner will fight normally, which means everything in this combat is at -1, but the banner will not get the +1 if it wins, and the dwarven banner will shield. So they are the two-handers, those big ones. Everything on a -1. Ooh, need this to be a 6 for the dwarf to win with his banner reroll. No, it's another 3. It goes to the elves. He's not trapped. He can back away. The dice then to wound. It's a 6 on the little one, but just 5s on the two-handers. And they get him there with a 6. He's got no fate, and he is dead. That is then all of those fights on this portion of the battlefield. We'll come over to the main event it is the heirloom carrying dwarf and his friend. Over here in this right hand corner then, we'll do the charging knight and an infantry against a shielding dwarf. So it's 3 attacks against 2. And it goes to the elves, who win it on fight value, which is then 4 attacks for the knight and 2 for the infantry, as he is prone. These all need 6s. And not a single one. He is smashed to the ground, but he is okay. We'll stand him up and put a pro marker on in a moment. Final fight then is the shielding dwarf carrying the objective against the captain and the knight. The knight will be the bigger one, just because we've only got 2 of those, and 3 for the captain. And then the shielding dwarf is those ones there. Oh, and it goes to the elves. It's not looking good for the dwarves. He did his best there with 5s, but he cannot compete. The captain there on those smaller dice getting enough. So now the captain is going to try and take the objective. If he kills him, he'll take it. He's wounding just on 5s with 6 dice. He's got expert rider, so he'll immediately take the objective. And he smashes him to pieces with 5 wounds on 6 dice. So he goes down, and we'll pop the multicoloured objective markers on him. So that captain now has the objective, and that is the end of the fight phase, and possibly the end of Dwarven hopes. Although Durin is very angry, and he is coming in, blocking that exit. He's going to go for blood now. End of turn 7, and the elves have taken the objective. The dwarves are in a very bad position here and are broken and nearly quartered. Durin is going to have to put in an awful lot of work here to reclaim this objective. Let's go into turn 8 priority. It goes to the dwarves. End of turn 8 movement. And Durin is getting ever closer to the objective. The knight captain was charged. That dwarf, that you can just about see, passed his courage test, stood and charged him. But he's been countercharged by a cavalry model. None of the dwarves fled, helped in part by the horn of Durin, which not only gives Durin terror, but also acts as a war horn, which is +1 courage to all friendly models on the table, which has kept some of the dwarves in the fight. Especially the chap up there, who got a 5 and was then able to recharge that knight for one of the longest running combats. And then here we have Haldir's being charged. He is only on 1 wound, so he needs to win that fight. Here the Khazad has been surrounded. These 2 are coming up. They're trying desperately to stop the objective from running from Durin. And then these 4 archers and their friend are lining up for some shots. We're into the shoot phase, so we'll go straight into those 4 shots. And they are going to go after the Khazad guard. They've not moved, so they're 3s to hit. Some good hits there, and then 6s to wound. Can they do it? 6s to wound. Yes, there is the 6. The Khazad guard is wounded. If they'd have gone for Durin, 6s by 5s, no. So it was a good shout going after the Khazad guard. Combats, we'll start with the most important fight, which is this one up here, miles away from the rest of the battle. But whoever wins this is definitely claiming the moral victory. It is the indestructible knight against the bowmen. It goes to the knight. Can he finally bring this bowman down? No, it keeps going. They're both too tough to be brought down. We'll just come down and we'll do the fights as they come. We'll do Haldir and 4 against a Khazad guard. Khazad guard gets the 6. Oh, so he's putting pressure now on Haldir. Haldir, out of might, is It's the bigger dice, and then it is 4. They need the 6 here, or Haldir may well die. Oh, there we go. There's the 6. They have won that fight. Haldir definitely has the fight value on him. And he's trapped, so this is probably a very dead dwarf. They are all going to be needing 6s. So all of these needing 6s, but they're double strikes. They don't need it. Haldir slams his sword straight down and cuts through the dwarf. The next fight is this 4-on-1. They're all going to fight normally, except obviously the Khazadum, who's burly. And the banner will be this one. He's got the -1. Whoa, that is a lot of 6s there. Very fine work from all parties, but the elves have the fight value and need 6s now to wound. Double strikes, and they get him. He is another dead dwarf. They are now so badly outnumbered that they are starting to just hemorrhage dwarves. Come across to the final fight. The dwarf doesn't really stand a chance, but he is going to fight nonetheless, and he needs to kill. So he is going to roll normally. He gets a 5, but the charges are not in his favour, so it's 3 for the standard knights. That one charged for an extra attack, and he didn't. And the knight captain didn't charge either, and he's the big ones. And they get the 5, so they have got an even roll to the dwarf there. If it's shielded, would it have made any difference? No, it wouldn't. And then rolling to kill. These are all double strikes, and they smash him to pieces. He is dead. Captain backing away even further from Durin. End of the turn, and it is actually the end of the game. The dwarves now have been quartered. The fight still going on up at the top, but here too many dwarves lost their lives in a final rally from the elves that cut down enough to quarter them. Here the objective very, very safe. Durin would have to go on a rampage and would have to grow wings realistically to ever catch that mounted captain who has the objective. The dwarves there, a victim of stubby legs. For victory points, the objective is well and truly in elven hands, being carried by an elf. That is 6 victory points. They also get 2 victory points for breaking the enemy and being unbroken. They in fact only lost 1 footman and 1 cavalry model. That is quite a nasty victory there. That takes them to 8, and then they also still have their banner, and they killed all enemy banners, giving them another 2 for 8 victory points. Haldir did take a wound, so that gives the dwarves 1 victory point for a 10-1 final score. MVPs for the dwarves have to be the King's Champion and his heralds. The heralds did incredible work by not dying, using all of their fate successfully. They held the line, and the King's Champion got the only victory point for the dwarves, which was wounding Haldir. And he also contributed massively to holding the line for as long as possible, keeping the objective in dwarven hands for probably 90% of the game. For the elves, MVP is the captain. He, with his incredible mobility, used his squad to charge well away from Durin, claiming the objective in the end, harassing the dwarves. He very much won the battle for the elves. Haldir and his force would have broken through. They did have some men about to take the objective, but the cavalry really did an incredible job led by that captain. And the captain obviously taking the objective and securing the game. Final score then, 10-1 to Haldir and the Elves of Lothlorien. I hope you've enjoyed this game. If you did, please do like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell button so that you're notified of any future releases. Do tend to upload round about once a week. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.